Hey guys, we're going to do our final video for this chapter. This is going to be kind of an overall review video to make sure okay, have you got all the skills that you need from this first unit? So, topic is review, and the big essential question is just what types of equations can I solve? Make sure you write your date in the notes and organize it neatly. This whole entire first chapter is just making sure you know how to solve all the different types of equations that are going to be useful for what we're doing in Algebra 1. So I'm just going to review. We're going to try some problems. I find the best way to do these is just to practice. So first off, to have an equation and to do some solving, you have to have a variable. So let's get some definitions in our note. A variable is just a letter which actually stands for a number. So usually I call it a mystery number. I say, oh, it's a mystery number. X is something that we don't know. X could be 10, X could be 100, it could be negative 3.75. Our job is to solve and figure out what is it. And an equation is when you have two expressions that are equal to each other. So you have to have an equal sign to have an equation. That's a key thing. Without the equal sign, you can't solve. You can simplify, but you can't actually solve. So an equation has an equal sign, and that's, I think, super important to remember. All right, let's try some problems. Oh yeah, emphasis on that equal sign. So our first example number 1, is called a single variable problem. And we're going to solve 4 plus 8x equals negative 2 plus 7x. It's single variable because there's only x's. I don't see any y's, I don't see z, I don't see any other variable other than x. So we're going to solve 4 plus 8x equals negative 2 plus 7x simply by going through our steps. First, line down the equal sign. Our job is to isolate x and get it all by itself. So first, I probably want to get the x's together. So I'm going to take 7x away from both sides. That'll get rid of it on the right. I'll cross it out, and then I'll simplify this down. So let's see, negative 2 is the only thing left on the right. I'm going to have a 4 plus 1x, a single x. 8 take away 7 is 1x. So 4 plus x equals negative 2. Wow, we're close to solving. All I got to do is take that 4 away. So I'm going to subtract the 4 to the other side, get rid of the 4's. X will now be isolated, and negative 2 and negative 4 is negative 6. So my solution is x equals negative 6. Okay, we're going to check our answer to bump this up to a level 4. So on a test or a quiz or an exit ticket, this is what I would do to go above and beyond. Some of you kind of struggle with speed and completing problems. If I was you on an exit ticket, I would always solve everything first, and I would go back and do the checks afterwards, because the check is like the cherry on top on the ice cream sundae. Like, it's the extra above and beyond. You would much rather get your level 3 first before going back for those level 4. So save the check as your last step after you've finished everything else. And the check is like this. You're going to copy the problem, but you're not going to solve it again. That'd be very redundant. We're not solving again. Instead, we already think we know the answer for x. It's negative 6. So we're going to replace the x with negative 6. And so what we get, instead of 4 plus 8x, is we get 4 plus 8 times negative 6. And it's going to equal negative 2, but instead of plus 7x, it'll be plus 7 times negative 6. And then we do our math. We see if it mathematically equals each other. 8 times 6 is 48, but it'll have to be a negative 48. And then 7 times 6 is 42, but it would have to be a negative 42. So we have 4 minus 48 equals negative 2 plus negative 42. Let's combine that together. 4 take away 48 is a negative 44, and negative 2 and negative 42 is a negative 44. This one checks out. They are equal to each other. The left and the right match. So I'm going to check mark it, and I know that my answer, x equals negative 6, is the right solution. So that's how I've kind of verified it. All right, so let's try another one, example 2. This time we are going to solve for p. Let's change the variable. So I'm going to solve for p, and the problem is 88 equals 8, parentheses, 1 minus 2p. Now this is a single variable problem. There's only p's involved, but there's another thing showing up here that's standing out to me. It's distributive property. I see a parentheses. Anytime I see distributive property, I know I got to kind of tackle that first and take care of it. So distributive property is pretty easy. The way it works is we're going to take that 8 and we're going to multiply it into the parentheses. We're going to do 8 times 1, and we're going to do 8 times 2p, and we're going to keep that subtraction sign in the middle. Now 8 times 1 is just 8, and 8 times 2 is 16, so it'd be 16p, so it'd be 8 take away 16p. Now that's on the right. On the left, we still have equals 88. Nothing's happened over there. But now I'm ready to solve. Now we've taken care of the distributive property and I'm ready to isolate the variable. I'm going to take 8 away from both sides, get rid of it. 88 take away 8 will be 80, so that's nice. On the other side, notice I still have a minus 16p. I still have the negative sign with it. That has not gone away. So to get rid of the 16, I'm going to divide, but I got to divide by the negative 16 to get rid of the negative sign. So divide by negative 16 on both sides, you get p all by itself. 80 divided by 16, if you don't know it, you could use a calculator, is 5, but it would have to be a negative 5 since it's 80 divided by a negative 16. So we're going to have a little negative sign in front of that 5 there. All right, so we got our answer. Distributive property means we have to multiply the number into the parentheses, so keep an eye out for that. Let's try another example, example 3. Example 3 is solve for y. So we are going to solve for y. And the problem we're going to solve is this, 4x minus 3y equals 15 equals 15. Now this is not a single variable problem. This is what we call a multivariable problem. It's got x's and it's got y's. And the directions say solve for y, which means when I do my line down the middle of the equal sign, at the bottom I better have y isolated by itself because that's what we're solving for. So anything that's not a y needs to move. Like the 4x, take it to the other side. Subtract the 4x away and move it over to the right. You're still going to have a minus 3y, it's still a negative, and 15 take away 4x, well you can't be like, well that's 11. You can't do that because it's a regular 15 and it's a 4x. They aren't like terms. So I'm just going to write 15 take away 4x and leave it like that. Then we're going to try to get rid of the negative 3 by dividing it away. When we divide the negative 3, it gets rid of it, but it means on the right side we have to divide everything by negative 3. That means 15 has to divide by negative 3, and then the negative 4x has to divide by negative 3. So it looks a little messy, but it's going to clean up. Let's see. 15 divided by 3 is 5, so it's going to be a negative 5. And then minus 4x over 3, well 4 divided by 3 is a decimal. I don't really want a decimal, but what's a negative divided by a negative? It's a positive, so I'm going to change this to a plus. I'm going to call it 4/3 x. 4/3 because it's 4 divided by 3 and I don't want that decimal. So negative 5 plus 4/3 x, that's going to be my solution. That's as cleaned up as I'm going to get it. So I'm going to leave it just like that. You have y isolated by itself. It's a messy answer because it's multivariable. We don't get these nice clean answers very often. All right, let's try another one. Example 4. This time we're going to solve for w. So what is our solve for w problem? Well, here it is. Absolute value of 6 plus w equals 4. Absolute value of 6 plus w equals 4. Okay, so obviously this is an absolute value problem. I find absolute values are a little tricky sometimes for people because inside that absolute value are two possible answers. It's either 4 or it's negative 4 because the absolute value of negative 4 is still 4. So what we do to solve these is we split them up. We say, okay, well that 6 plus w, it could equal 4 on the inside of there, or that 6 plus w could equal negative 4. So there are two possible answers for w. So you kind of have two little equations you have to solve. You put your line down the equal sign. Both are pretty fast. You're going to take that 6 away and isolate the w. 4 take away 6 would be negative 2. So that's our first answer. And then on the other one, if you took the 6 away, you would isolate the w and you'd have negative 4 and negative 6. That's negative 10. So we have two solutions for w on this absolute value problem. And hopefully both of them make this equation true. In fact, we could even check it. Let's go for the level 4 and do the check on this one. The check requires two pieces of work because you have two answers to check. So I'm going to take the original problem with the absolute values involved, absolute value of 6 plus w equals 4, and I'm going to change the w to my first answer, which was negative 2. So absolute value of 6 plus negative 2 equals 4. What is 6 plus negative 2? Well, it's 4, isn't it? And what's the absolute value of 4? It's 4. So this one checks out. This one looks like it works. I'm going to put a check mark by it. But I still need to check my other solution. So I'm going to do another check. Same thing, absolute value of 6 plus w equals 4. I copy the problem. Then I'm going to change the w to my negative 10 that we got. 6 plus negative 10 combines to negative 4, but the absolute value of negative 4 is just regular positive 4. So this one checks out too. So we have 2 checks, double checked it. Both answers work, so I'm feeling really good about it. And again, this is that cherry on top. This is that level 4 work where I went a little bit above and beyond to see if I got the right solution. Okay, so if I went too fast on that, go back, re-listen to it, maybe make sure you pause the video and write everything down because these absolute value problems are pretty important. All right, we are going to summarize this video. So here are the main things you need to remember from our first chapter. What are you solving for? Read the directions. Are you solving for X or are you solving for Y? Pay attention to those variables, especially in those multivariable problems. You want to read those directions carefully. Remember, the goal is always to isolate the variable. Get X by itself, get W by itself, get Y by itself, whatever you're solving for. And check your solution. You can always check and see if you're right. That check is your level 4. Go for the extra steps on that. You can also, we didn't do any examples of this in the video, but you can also name your properties if you know them. That's really going above and beyond if you can do that. And a lot of people forget the properties pretty quickly, but these are the main ones in our first chapter we've been working on. We've got that addition property of equality, subtraction property of equality, multiplication and division property of equality, and then the one that we kind of forget sometimes is that distributive property with the parentheses. So all of those, if you know how to name them next to your steps, go for it. That's that, like I said, that's that really going above and beyond step. It's pretty impressive if you can do it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope this summary video really helps you out and you are ready to take your Chapter 1 test soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.